Welcome. We're with John Olsson, candidate for the Airport Authority, doing our editorial board endorsement interview. John, thanks for being with us. We will start off going around the horn with the editorial board members. I'm Dave Bundy, editor of the Journal Star. Martha, you want to go next?
Yes, good morning, John. I'm Martha Ellen Florence, and I am one of the community members of the editorial board.
John?
My name's John Schreier, and I'm one of the assistant city editors here at the Journal Star.
And I'm Robbie Estes. I'm the controller here at the Journal.
You're it, Kent.
Oh, I'm Kent Walgamot, entertainment arts writer. I've been on the editorial board about 12 years.
Kent, I would have thought that the guy that covers entertainment would have taken his cue better there. We're going to have to rehearse. All right. Well, John, we will have other folks mute themselves. You can unmute yourself because you'll be doing a lot of the talking now. Some of these questions will sound similar to what's in the voter's guide. We assume everybody lives and dies by the voter's guide that the Journal Star puts out, but just in case they don't, you can reiterate. Oh, Robin Eshelman is joining us right now. And Robin is a community member of our board as well. Welcome, Robin. We just introduced everybody, and while you were connecting, I introduced you. So we are going to launch into the questions with John. So first off, the last year has not looked like a fun one for elected officials, but you are running for office. What attracts you to running for office and the Airport Authority specifically? And then what has prepared you to serve?
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Hello, Robin. Nice to see your face. So I guess my why statement is one of the questions I heard there. Why on earth would I want to run for office? And never in a million years did I think I would as a young person, but through the course of life, things change. And as I thought about this particular opportunity, I think first and foremost, being a Lincoln resident, born and raised here, Madruso, Irving, Lincoln Southeast, I've spent 50 years here. That's a long time. This community has been very, very good to me. It's allowed me to raise 4 wonderful children, the youngest of which we just sent off to college this August. But Lincoln is a great place. As a businessman, this is where our headquarters is. We were started here in 1956. We now have close to 1,400 employees in 8 states, but the talent and the people that we've been able to find in Lincoln are awesome. So I can't just say enough good about this community in terms of what it's meant to me personally, for my family, as well as from the business standpoint in terms of how we've been able to grow. On top of that, it's probably worth mentioning that I have a love for aviation. I became a licensed pilot this past May. It's been on my bucket list since 1987 when the movie Top Gun came out. But here we are 33 years later, and I was able to realize a dream and learn to fly, and it has been an incredible experience. The whole world of aviation is remarkable. There is a lot to it. I've learned so much, and I have a lot to learn, but I've kind of become addicted to aviation. I think another thing that's part of my why statement here is that when I thought about this back in November, which was kind of the time that the apple hit me on the head, there was the discussion of this terminal project coming that was going to involve spending a little bit of money and potentially some expertise could be brought forward. So coming from the world of design and engineering and construction, I actually thought I could bring some substantive value to bear by being a watchful eye for the community and keeping track of that project as it unfolds. So that felt pretty good to me. And another factor would be the consideration that there's 2 people leaving the board. So that's quite a loss of institutional knowledge, 2/5 walking away. So it felt like there was a need to step in and to serve. I want to serve this community. Longer ago, I got to know Dean Finnegan through Leadership Lincoln. I was in class 16 and she instilled into me this idea of servant leadership. You just roll up your sleeves, work hard, do what you need to do, and the rest should take care of itself. So I've bought into Dean's philosophies ever since, and I've always been active in the community. Lincoln Airport Authority seemed like a perfect alignment for me. It had aviation, they needed engineering and construction, they have a deficit in knowledge. This is my home. So that's kind of the big part of the why. In terms of your second question, Dave, any special expertise or qualifications? I kind of touched on that. You know, I am a pilot. I do appreciate all things aviation. And you know, when you work in an area that you enjoy, that you love, you're usually at your best. And that's what I kind of feel with this opportunity, is that I can be at my best because I'm motivated by it, and I want to see this move forward. I'll stop there. I've got more I can say, but I'm sure it will come up later.
Yeah, probably will.
Yeah.
Beyond beyond the expansion project, what do you see as being and we'll come back to go into that in a little more detail, but what are the most important issues that are facing the airport and the airport authority right now and in the future?
I think the single largest issue is commercial air service, or lack thereof. We don't have a lot of it, as you know. We've got United that goes to Chicago and Denver. We recently were able to get Delta to come back after they left. They have a flight now just to Minneapolis, but I think the ability to try to increase the number of flights with the carriers that we have, or potentially bring in a new carrier, maybe going to the south like Dallas or Houston, that would be pretty cool. I think that's really important. So attracting commercial air service is my highest priority. Beyond that, the airport is more than just commercial air service, though. There's 5,000 acres out there. There's a lot going on. Over on the east side, we've got the general aviation side of the business, which is Duncan Aviation, Silverhawk, Performance Aircraft, and Hill Aero. Those are 4 very important businesses to Lincoln. They employ a lot of people, and they need to have room to grow. Okay, like any business, they want to have room to expand. So the airport authority needs to think about that and be mindful of their growth needs. Then conversely, on the west side, the industrial, what I'll call the industrial area, that's something kind of unique for the airport. They have some things going on out there that generates a little bit of revenue for them, that allows them to offset a good percentage of their operating costs. But when I think of that industrial area, and I talk about this in the things that I've published, we just need to manage that, provide balanced growth over there, because they have some advantages as a government entity related to taxes, related to no impact fees, that kind of gives them a competitive advantage against typical private sector when it comes to development. So I think having open conversations and managing that in a way that is reasonable is something that's pretty important, okay? Because we've got folks that do development, we've got the airport that has some advantages, we just got to find the right balance in there. And then, of course, is the military, right? We've got Army National Guard and Air National Guard that are really, really good partners to us. I've had some good conversations with some of the leadership over there, and they define the current relationship that they have with the airport authority as stellar. That's good news. We want to make sure they're happy here, they stay put. They have some things, for example, fire and rescue, they provide all that to the airport authority through a memorandum of understanding. So there's real value we get from that. So we got to make sure they're happy and they don't want to go anywhere.
All right, well, John, I think you may have messed up Kent's question, but we'll let Kent ask it anyway and see if there's, or maybe Kent's going to tweak it somehow.
Yeah, I always ask about the property management, because I think a lot of people don't understand how much property and what they've got out there and what they're working on. It was the 2 things you said that were interested me. Do you think there is some potential for some additional development on that industrial side? And I'm also interested in the road that goes around the outside that sort of needs fixing up.
It does. It does. I'll start there. That perimeter road is a disaster, and to get it fixed, it's a $5 million spend. Okay, so it's a lot of money. I guess one thing it does do it controls the speed on it because you can't go too fast, otherwise you're just bouncing all over the place. But it is a problem, and it is on their list of projects to do. The problem is it's expensive. It's $5 million. Then to the question of the development, Ken, I do think there's some opportunity there. They own a lot of land, but I think, you know, it's finding the right use. And, you know, I think that's where having some open conversations with the development community can make some sense. Maybe there's a sweet spot in there where, you know, the development community can kind of see that it makes some sense a little bit. And I don't think we're talking big boxes necessarily, but maybe it's maybe there's some smaller parcels in there that could be developed, because the fact is it does generate some revenue for the airport that they can use to help feed into their operating budgets. So it is a good thing. It is an asset to the airport authority. There's no doubt about it. And even now it's worth a little bit more because of what Offutt has done out there, right? They've spent, I think, over $30 million to do some things, mostly in the form of concrete. And some of that will still have value after Offutt. Not a lot of it, because some of it's pretty customized to their mission and what they're doing, but part of it can be carried over, and I think we can get some value out of it post Offutt. So I think that's something we need to try to keep in the back of our mind too, from when that day comes.
And I haven't asked anybody else this because nobody else has actually mentioned it, but do you think there's a potential for more expansion of the general aviation out there? I think that once again is an area I spent quite a bit of time at Duncan, so you know I'm pretty familiar with it, and it seems like that's an area that Lincoln is really good with now and maybe could expand.
Absolutely. I think Duncan is a great employer for Lincoln. Those are really nice jobs. And if we don't have room on the east side for them, I think the west side could be perfect for that. Now, I don't understand their model well enough or how they do business to know if it was decentralized like that, if it still works for them. But I think it's something we need to consider, and consider very strongly, because there's a lot of room over there. And now it's fresh pavement in a lot of areas. Be nice to leverage that investment.
So John, what do you see as the sort of the short-term and long-term impacts of the pandemic on the airport? And is there, you know, it's been a challenge, but lots of businesses have emerged stronger. Are there opportunities as well in the aftermath of the pandemic for the airport?
Yes, I think there are opportunities. I think, you know, thinking about the short term, it has been hugely detrimental to the airport, right? Passenger counts are way down. I don't remember the exact number, maybe close to 25% of what they were pre-pandemic. So that was a huge gut punch to the airport and their revenues. But on the other hand, you can kind of use this period of time to step back a little bit and say, okay, as we start to roll out of this and travel starts to pick up again, and it will, and it's starting to, you know, what could be done to better position the airport for when that day comes? And I think that's when the timing of this whole terminal project gets real interesting. If some of that construction is able to happen over the next year and a half, or say 2 years, hopefully by then we're kind of looking at COVID in the rearview mirror. Lincoln will have had a chance to have the disruption of a project of that scale when the numbers were down. So maybe it's a little easier to manage construction when the numbers are down.
You know, the project, the expansion project is already, you know, it's already on track. You'd be coming into it a little later than the planning phase, but looking at what they've, you know, the scope of it, and then thinking about where you would be joining the process as a board member, are there things that you would rethink? Are there different priorities? Are there other things that need to be considered as this work is ongoing?
So, I understand what's being proposed in general, right? In terms of the number of gates and the configuration and some of the amenities. I think something that's going to be really important to me is to make sure that the Lincoln Airport feels different from any other airport. We have to find a way to differentiate. I think it's going to be tough for us to differentiate on price. I don't know that we'll ever be considered the lowest airfare around. Omaha, Kansas City are always going to be there. We need to make our rates competitive, okay? That there's some delta between the lowest price and what Lincoln will be. We need to figure out what that delta is. But I think where the airport can differentiate is through the experience, the customer experience when someone goes to the airport. For example, if you go to some of the other airports that are not in Lincoln, when you pull up to the curbside, you have an experience there. You may have a security officer waving at you, yelling at you, telling you not to get out of your car. And then when you go into the terminal, there's an experience you feel when you're there. I would like to see people's and customers' experience in Lincoln be second to none. Let's create a memory. Let's create a wonderful experience about aviation. Aviation is cool, okay? We got to get people from point A to point B, but are there some things we can do to make it a really positive and exciting experience like I remember as a little kid, right? When I, as a young man, got to travel, that was exciting. You used to get pretty jacked up about that. Well, anymore, it's not so fun. It seems like there's a lot of just pain and suffering, I guess, to travel. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think our little simple airport in Lincoln, Nebraska can be fun, and we can put people on an airplane with a smile and they will remember what happened, okay? And if that's true, if we can make people think positively, maybe they're willing to pay a little bit more to fly out of Lincoln because it's simple and because it's fun.
That's interesting. We've had a couple other candidates who have been totally focused on price and have said, if you build it, nobody goes to an airport because airports are cool. But you're making a different case, and that's an interesting thought. And that sort of got to my next question, which was, travelers shopping around and what can be done. It does feel a little bit like a chicken and an egg situation with bringing more travelers and getting more flights. So what's the jump start for this? I mean, maybe it is what you're saying, the experience. Are there other things that might jumpstart that sort of cycle?
Well, it's totally a chicken and the egg thing. It's exactly that. So how do you, I would like, as I think I'd mentioned in my written questions or in other things, I think right now on average, the average flyer uses Lincoln only 25% of the time. So that means the other 75% are going to Grand Island, Omaha, Kansas City. If we could, get that 25% to a 50%, that's a good start. So my ask of the community would be just to consider Lincoln a little bit more. You don't have to commit all the time to fly out of Lincoln because sometimes it doesn't work. If it's you and your spouse, your partner, and a family of 4, that's 6 people, a $70 Delta suddenly becomes $420, and that's a big deal. But give it a look because the prices sometimes on certain flights are not as different as you think. So we've got to encourage people to give Lincoln a look.
Well, I have to say, I've got 4 kids and I've climbed off a plane in Omaha at 10:30 at night and had to go get a shuttle to my car and then get my kids in and get home. And I've just wanted to pull over and cry. So the idea of getting off in Lincoln doesn't sound so bad.
Well, it is. And I think, if they could tout some, higher reliability too. I mean, because when you don't have a lot of flights, a traveler depends on that flight being on time. So I think if there's some things we could do to increase the reliability, or if the reliability is already there, to publicize it, to make folks understand that the likelihood of them getting home as planned is pretty good.
I have one remaining question. So I'd like to see if anybody on the board has anything they'd like to jump in with. And Kent's looking like he's ready to pounce.
Yeah, and this is not greatly substantive. I'm interested in your experience as a pilot. Did you just take lessons over like the last year, or?
I did.
And what are you flying?
Yeah, so I started in August of 2019, and I got my license in May of 2020. Within the last 2 months, I did buy an airplane. So I've got a little plane that I can call my own. It's a Cirrus, which is a 20-year-old airplane, but it's all I need.
Excellent.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, well, John, the last question I have for you is, what didn't we ask that you really wish we would have?
Well, I'm a little surprised you didn't ask me about how the terminal project would be funded and what I thought about that.
All right, well, I know a little bit from your answer, but tell us more.
Well, I think before I speak about how to fund it, let's make sure, I just want to talk about the project itself, okay? This project is very much an infrastructure project. This is bricks and mortar through and through. It's not to fund any operating costs. This is for a terminal project as well as the entry road going into it. The perimeter road around there, while it's needed, that is not in this project. This is terminal upgrades and the entryway. So when I hear about a project like that, to me, that is infrastructure through and through. Airports are infrastructure, just like roads, water, and sewer, and now fiber are infrastructure to a community. A terminal is very much the same thing. So I have seen several times over how infrastructure projects have reshaped this community. You could look at Antelope Valley, you could look at Innovation Campus, and you could look at West Haymarket, where I'm sitting right now. Those projects, I think, made this community of Lincoln different, and I would say different in a good way. 10 years ago, we weren't on these lists of best place for entrepreneurs or best place for family. We're kind of quiet. That's not true anymore, and I think it's at the hands of some of these infrastructure projects. The terminal project could be that project for Lincoln. It's not a slam dunk. This is not easy. We're going to have to work hard. But this gives us a chance to get people excited to fly out of Lincoln, create an experience that people will remember, and see how infrastructure can make this community better. We don't want Gallups to leave. You know, they left for several reasons, but one of them was the air service, right? We got to hang in there and continue to fight for a good airport. It's that important. Not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen quick. That's okay. Lincolnites are used to that. We roll up our sleeves, we fight hard, we get it done. As far as the tax, as far as the tax goes, I think I should mention with what's happening in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of talk of infrastructure funding. There's a $2 trillion infrastructure package being considered. I've seen some of the language in there, and they talk in there about $25 billion potentially being available for terminal projects. I would like to see, and we need to investigate that to see if we can use that to offset some of the cost and minimize the burden that would go back to the taxpayers. The airport doesn't have any other way to fund this. There's no money sitting and waiting. They did not accumulate funds from the last time the last levy expired in the mid-'80s. They didn't, continue to get a quarter cent. None of that happened. So we're starting from nothing, and they don't have money sitting there. So we've got to ask the community to help out. And I think the scale of this project, to me, as I've talked to the staff and the board, it feels about right. You could have done less. We could have scaled it back to 25 or 30 million, kind of the bare bones, or we could have scraped the entire site and started over at a cost well north of 100 million. To me, I think this feels about right. It gives us a chance for some return on investment in time.
All right. Well, any final words? Those were fine final words if they're it. All right. Well, John, thank you very much for your time. This was a very helpful interview, and we are grateful for folks who stick their neck out to run because they elevate the conversation in the community and set an example for everybody that they can serve. So thank you very much for running, and we'll look forward to see what happens.
Thank you very much for your time today. Have a good week.
All right, you too. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.